that data literacy is, for me, a vehicle for every admin in the Salesforce space to help their team. So Salesforce admins have a lot of jobs. They do everything from page layouts to building flows to running reports to handling requests from users to building new custom objects, lots of things. But what I found repeatedly, especially in my work with Apsona, is that team members need to understand their data and they need to build their data literacy. So my goal in these workshops is to give you, the Salesforce admin or the Salesforce user, more tools in your tool belt to build data literacy at your organization. These will be uploaded to YouTube to just my private channel in the short term, but my hope is to continue to get information from you all along the way. I'll probably be following up with a few questions to some of you guys directly and see if you want to do a coffee chat. Love to just pick your brain on where data literacy gaps of knowledge show up in your business or your organization and where we can address those with some of the workshops we're building. I have been a nonprofit staff person. That's how I fell into Salesforce. Then I was an admin. Somebody handed me Salesforce and said, can you make this work? I usually reference that about 6 months of my full-time, 6 months FTE. I was a decent admin. I'd built some custom objects. I'd figured out what I needed to do, built some reports. And then I became a consultant, and that's where my learning curve really took off. So happy to network with folks that are looking to become an SI consultant or an ISV consultant. That has led me to where I am today in my career as a Chief Engagement Officer at Apsona. I love it. I basically had a chance to help people everywhere in the Salesforce space with their data and create value from their data. But we're all on a journey together. And I just want you guys to know I'm just another person in that journey that's trying to figure out my next steps and how to create value in the world. Would love to network with you guys on LinkedIn or through coffee chats. If you guys have general questions for me, my contact information will be at the end of this. And would love to connect with you on LinkedIn or social media. You'll usually find me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm usually traveling with my family. This is one of my kids, and trying to just have a great time enjoying the Salesforce space in the community and serving customers and clients along the way. I sit at the vista of this overlook that I feel like in the Salesforce space. I basically have a number of, thousands of sort of Salesforce customers that are Apsona customers, and they come to Apsona on a regular basis because Apsona has the tools needed to solve their problems. Those tools are generally related to data literacy. So a person says, I can't get this report to work, or I can't get my data loaded in Salesforce, or I can't get this document merged to work. A lot of the underlying questions are data literacy related. Maybe it's a new admin, maybe it's a new data model, maybe there's a visibility setting they haven't checked, but a lot of this is related to how data literate they are. And my role in Apsona has really informed a lot of my understanding of this. I've been at Apsona for 2 years. Before that, I was a consultant for about 8 years. And most of that role was in helping end users and Salesforce admins make Salesforce more powerful for their team. So my goal today is to give admins everywhere more tools on how to develop data literacy with the first stop on our data literacy journey. Would love to connect with any of you guys on Pickleball or on family sightseeing stuff. That's the last intro to this general slide here. And if you guys have any questions about Apsona, please let me know. All of the things I know about data, a lot of them have come through building data literacy with teams through Apsona. So I found it like one of the most effective tools to build data literacy at an organization, but this is not a sales call. So not essential for you guys to build data literacy in your company today. Why don't you guys put a 2 in the chat if you guys were at my last workshop, which was just sort of a general overview of data literacy. Put a 2 in the chat if you were in my last workshop, and put a 5 in the chat, a big number 5, if this workshop today is going to motivate you guys to attend my next 4 workshops. So today you are here on reading data. You are here, gotta love the thing. And then the next 4 stops we're gonna make is we're like, hey, can we show admins how they can help their teams read data? And then will that allow them to bring their teams to a place where they work with data, get their hands dirty on it, updating data, changing fields, mass updating, exporting, importing, to the point where they can analyze the data. This is a big stop because reporting usually stops a lot of admins in their tracks because they can't get the reports they need. And they stumble figuring out how do they get this to people on their team that need key reports, because those people want to, you guessed it, argue with data. If they can't argue with data, then they can't prove their points. They can't defend their departments. They can't spend their money. They want to have all of these things to move forward. Joseph, thanks for the question. We do have that recording on our YouTube channel. Aaliyah, if you could grab that YouTube link for Joseph and post in the chat, that'd be wonderful. The last step here is not the last step, but the next step after arguing with data, just sort of as a fun point, because you want to be able to feel strongly enough about your data to say, I care about this and I care about this job that I'm doing, and I want to show that I'm doing great work. You want to be able to argue with that so you can communicate it to your team. So it's sort of a double-sided thing where you want to know enough about the data and feel confident about it, that it's accurate, that it's clear, and that you understand it, so you can make points, so you can lead, so you can serve your team, make sure that they're working and using Salesforce as best as available. So Data Pro is where we're looking to get everybody here. And today I'm excited to share 5 specific tools about how you can help your team read data better. Now, reading data basically just means exploring the Salesforce records on your screen and saying, this is what the data in Salesforce represents with the outside world. We're going to use a couple key objects today. One is opportunities, one is opportunity products, and one is opportunity contact roles. Now, those are just words that I'm saying, but they actually represent important value for a sales team or a fundraising team, depending on how they use those records. But the ability for one of the members of your team, of your staff, of your users to be able to say, oh, this is how this record represents value to me in the world is a key responsibility. I don't think it's stressed in the Salesforce admin world, but your goal is to make your people more powerful, enable them to show more value from their data. And you got to sort of make this connection at the front end and say like, hey, this is how this data works. I think that for the most part, we'd love to get you guys' perspective on this. Could you guys give me a 1 for a thumbs up or a 0 for a thumbs down? We'll go binary here. If you think that Salesforce admins are often the most data literate people on their staff. If you think that's true, give me a 1 in the chat. If you think that's false, give me a 0 and maybe the reason why, because I'd love to hear that from you. Thanks, Lisa. So good to see you. Emily said a 1. Oh, Aaron. All right, Aaron. Nice. I like it. Lisa, you can't change your score. 0.5, that doesn't count. Well, yeah, Aaron, would love to find out if you think there are other people that are more data literate, maybe just list those titles or those roles, because I think those are the people we're trying to sort of suss out and say, who are these folks that are the most data literate? And then can we tap them and say, hey, what did you do to create data literacy? Justin's not the only expert here. There are other people that know data literacy. How do we draw them into this Salesforce community and then help them showcase the things that they've built and the ways they've done it? So Aaron says specifically sort of sales ops or rev ops teams. Definitely agree. Some of the best thinking and learning that I've had from advanced Salesforce dashboards is from David Kearns. He's out of the Northeast. He, as an organization, actually does rev ops. So I think he is like an expert in reporting and dashboards because he has a rev ops, revenue operations company. And Lisa, thank you so much. Power users often know more about what the end goal should be than the admins. Great point. Like they're more familiar with their data. Power users, folks that maybe are report writers, if you're at a higher ed, or if you have a dedicated role around people that are doing report writing for your team, they often know their data model really well, and they're very familiar with what your end users or decision makers are trying to get to. Like, what's that insight they're narrowing in on to get to their data? Emily, thanks for your comment. Our ops team for sure, and your prospect development team. So yeah, so there are these folks that like, they know that there's value in that data and they're trying to unlock it. So the goal here is how do we create more tools for either those people on your teams or for you working with those folks to unlock that data value. Our objective is to create tools and practices that can enable your teams to get to that first marker in their data literacy journey. My first one is going to be really plain, right? So I'm not pulling any fast ones on you here. You guys are all smart people, and some of you are new to your journey, but others are there. One of the things that I loved the most about my prior consulting role was I had learned from a gentleman that was working actually in the Microsoft space, and he was working to build a common data model. So this is not directly related to what we're doing here today, but he said specifically that the common language of business was often Excel or a spreadsheet. That if you were a business user, if you were a professional, and you do not know how to use Excel or a spreadsheet, then you cannot move forward in business. And if you can't sort or use columns or charts or reports, you're going to be severely limited in your ability to take data and make decisions from it. So Excel is almost like this language of business that everybody understands. If you do not give your teams the ability to see editable, sortable, sort of flexible tables with their Salesforce data in it, then their only way to access it is going to be their own knowledge of Salesforce. This is one way of saying, can you take the menu of options in terms of how they see and understand their data, how they read their data, can you bring it to the lowest level? in one sense, can we create a primer? Can you give your people a way to see their data in this place that allows them to see it and understand it like Excel? Because we're taking as a general expectation that most everybody knows how to use Excel, even to read Excel, maybe to sort columns, maybe to hide or change cells, because it's pretty easy to do. One simple way to do that is the data export. So I think most of us are familiar with that. Put a 0 in the chat if you're not familiar with the data export. It is one of the first things that I learned when I was a Salesforce admin, but it was expressly the ability to go to setup, go to data export, and if you have this permission in your Salesforce profile, not available for everybody because your data is your treasure, you may not have that ability, you can basically export it. And the key here is the way that you export it is explicitly around tables. So if I have a contact table and I want to get the contacts out of Salesforce, I can just export this list or export a specific one, and then I can create that as a secure table, a Google spreadsheet or an Office Excel file, and I can give that to my team. If I actually have this whole export as a series of tables, I can get that here in the sidebar on this right-hand image. This is how the actual export appears as a CSV or as a zip file. So it's a zip file, and every object in your Salesforce instance represents a table. So you could get the account table, and you could share that with a particular group of people. In one sense, this might be more helpful for smaller groups of people or smaller orgs that don't have as much data in their instance, where you'd want to segment it and only allow certain people to see certain segments of your account records or of your contact records. But this is like the simplest one, right? So let's just get this out of the gate and say, sometimes it's easy enough to run the data export, pull the CSV you want, and then look at it. And sometimes that's a foundational rule there. Next up, we've got some apps. So one of the easiest way to think about this is there's some out-of-the-box reports you can run. If you guys are Salesforce admins, you generally can sort of build those reports and show them yourself. We're going to get to one of those examples in step 4. But for our second tool, we're just going to say, hey, there's apps out there that allow you to show your Salesforce data in an example today. Salesforce has been around since 1999. So it has 24 years of development behind it. Things have gotten really, really easy. And if you're scratching your head somewhere saying, why is it this hard? Why hasn't Salesforce fixed this? Chances are somebody out there, some app developer has created this. This is an app called Salesforce Connector. I'm going to pull it up here on screen so you guys can see my secondary screen. And I'm going to go up here to the top left and share. So honest truth, I just simply went online today and I Googled this, and I had no idea that Google had created this marketplace app until today. So the last update for it was December of this last year. So it's pretty recent. I went ahead and installed it and tried it out. It worked. It took me maybe 3 to 4 button clicks, but the express outcome was, I clear my screen, you give your team the ability to say, show me a report and show it in a spreadsheet. So once you click on the install link, you're able to sort of install this at an individual level or an admin level. And then the goal is with this extension menu, you have this Salesforce Connector app that sort of lives and sits in your Google spreadsheet. If you're a Google shop, and opening this brings open a sidebar that allows you to sort of pull whatever tables, whatever adjustable, flexible, sortable tables you want from Salesforce into a spreadsheet, because you know your teams probably know how to use the spreadsheet. So this one from right here is just an account sorting ID. My quick caveat to you all is to make sure that you do grab the account IDs. A lot of these apps rely on the Salesforce record ID for a table to make sure that you if you do want to update the data and push it back into Salesforce after you manipulate it in the spreadsheet, that's something you don't have to make available, but it's something you can. And wanting to make sure that you guys are aware that the account ID or the ID for a particular record is important here. So I just grabbed a particularly recent run report. I clicked on import to active sheet. I said get data, and then immediately I was able to say, hey, like I just pulled Salesforce data, but I put it in a table, and now I can share the spreadsheet through the Google sharing settings with whoever I want on my team. Maybe this is a part of a daily review. Maybe it's a sales ops review. Maybe it's a fundraising gift officer review. You have a number of options on how to approach this as a team. Aaliyah, send me a chat if you're having trouble with my video. It seems like my video is a little laggy. My apologies, team. If my audio is breaking up at all, please let me know in the chat if that's possible. So this was one app. It's pretty easy to use. It's 100% free. It's made by Google, so there's some high verification sources there, and you can even read the review rating. Some of the reviews says that it struggles with large data loads, so you might not want to do it for tens of thousands of records, but you can do it here, and it's free. I'm going to switch back to my Salesforce Google Slides. If you guys have questions along the way, please leave them in the chat. We'd be happy to answer those publicly. My goal here is to create as much knowledge, as much sharing for the teams as possible, or for the staff present here today. So one question I got was, is there a way that users could circumvent your security? I would, unfortunately, play the safe harbor card and just say, you'd want to check your the overview answer to the instruction documents here and ensure that this application, my expectation is that it would obey whatever your user's login credentials would be. So since I logged into this instance as a Google user and as a Salesforce user, it would authenticate around my permissions available to me as a user in a profile. So the expectation would be that it would respect those. That may not be. Every app is different, and the App Exchange is a wide place where you can do lots of things. But the hope is you would definitely review that before installing in production to confirm it works. The organization that I'm using today, the Salesforce org, is a sandbox. Great question. Thanks for asking. Feel free to keep the questions coming, teams. Let me switch over to my other app, my other menu. So that was just sort of a second one. And maybe you're not a Google Sheets person. Maybe Excel is your tool of choice. From my perspective, I'm in Google Spreadsheets a lot during the day, but then for a lot of small table loads or adjustments, Excel has a lot more computing power. If I need to do some adjustments or things in Excel, sometimes that's easier. So I had some success in the past using Zapex. I just referenced them as a snapshot here because they do have a free version. You can look them up on the App Exchange. They are pretty easy to install. I had success with them in the past when I'd used them before. I'm going to show you guys the screen that I had used before to install it. I had gone to the same set of apps before. I'd gone to the App Exchange, I logged into the App Exchange, and then I just sort of looked up Excel connector, and then they give you a couple sort of options here, but there's also a free version as well. The goal here is that Excel has a very similar extensions menu like Google Spreadsheets does. So the extensions menu in Excel, even though it's on your PC, would sort of pull in that Excel add-on and show that data in Excel. You'd then be able to manipulate it, change it, review it, and then push it back. So let me pause for a second and say all of these two tools and the idea of a data export is simply the ability to take the data that's in Salesforce, sometimes in a way that's hard for your users to understand, and put it in an easy to understand way. Give it to them in a table that they can manipulate and change so that it's adjustable, sortable, and flexible. If you can do that, they can control it. And you don't want them to have to come to you to ask you, why is their sales goal not hitting the numbers they want? Why was that opportunity amount 10,000 less than it should have been? Why isn't that close date up to date? You want to make sure that they have ways to do this information, but not in a record by record basis. You want to give them the tools to do this in mass and to review it in mass. Number 3. So this is starting out with like a don't do this. And some people prefer to do this, and that's fine. But let me switch back to my other screen. My don't do this app is referencing right here. You know what? Let me actually do this. Nope, I'm going to keep it right here. This ERD, this entity relationship diagram, is complex. It is basically the Sales Cloud overview. I know it's a little small. My apologies on the screenshot, but it's basically an overview of all of the sales-related objects for Salesforce out of the box. So it's sort of Sales Cloud, and that's what it says up here at the top, Sales Cloud overview. I just generally think that if you're trying to start people on a data literacy journey, you don't want to overwhelm them. You want to reduce the complexity, reduce the context switching, reduce it so that they're able to understand piece by piece what you're trying to hand over to them. I think of it as bite-sized chunks of knowledge. You're the Salesforce admin. You're often the most data literate person across your Salesforce architecture. Help sort of just bite-sized chunk this out to them so that they understand it. Something that's a lot better is often to say, give them a schema builder. Schema builder is not great in all contexts, but I think it's helpful in a lot of scenarios to just take things through one step at a time. So if they have a question about why opportunities and products aren't the same as, don't relate in the same way to opportunities and contact roles, you can go to Salesforce Setup. It's in the Setup menu. I'm going to pull it up in just a moment to show you guys what it looks like. But being able to say, hey, this is actually how these couple records sort of interreact together in Salesforce. I'm going to switch over to my top screen. So here in my sandbox, I'm going to click on my schema builder that I have pulled up. It's under Setup, under just Schema Builder. So if you type in Schema Builder, it'll sort of show right there. And it is all of the tables. So in one sense, the data export menu from Salesforce gives you all your tables in all of your Excel, your Salesforce objects in a CSV by CSV view. So you can get each table individually, and all of those records are rows, and all of those fields are columns, and all of those CSVs will exist for you. But if you want to say, hey, let's take a sample individual or a sample record and talk through that, sometimes it's helpful to just sort of take out the schema builder and say, this is how the data works in our instance. And since the schema builder is live and dynamic and it shows in Salesforce, you can talk your team sort of through it. So it might even be helpful to have a tutorial talking them through, hey, here's this key thing that I'm going to try to teach you guys today. Opportunities is an object, and underneath opportunities, there's two objects that relate to them. One object is opportunity contact role, and a different object is opportunity products. And you sort of just use the schema builder as a way to explain to them, for every one opportunity, there are many opportunity contact roles, but the way that those opportunity contact roles relate is through a lookup field. And then you might need to understand what a lookup field is and explain that. And then likewise, you might say, hey, so an opportunity contact role is valuable at a point of data to the real world because it represents who are the key decision makers or involved in a particular deal or opportunity or donation. And then you explain to them how that works and how that makes sense. But you say there could be two roles, there could be one role, there might be no roles, depending on how you're using Salesforce. But talking through it in a way that gives your team the ability to ask questions and see it in sort of like a drawing model gets their brains out of Salesforce sort of record detail view. You bring them to a place that is drawable on the screen. You give them the Zoom icon and they say, well, what about this other app? What about opportunity schedules or opportunity product schedules? Or what about accounts? Where does accounts lives? And then you can sort of take your, sorry, let me take this over. You can take this over and you say, well, accounts is actually over here. And then you sort of take accounts and maybe you zoom out a little bit first. But Schema Builder sort of just gives you a way to sort of explain your key data model, because that's what they care the most about is their data. And then say accounts is another object. But for every account record, there's multiple opportunities. So you guys, I think you sort of get the gist here. If you have questions about how to use Schema Builder, please list them here in the chat. Happy to answer them along the way. But the goal is that you're able to sort of explain and navigate the ideas around reading data and explaining data as it represents the real world in Salesforce, but to do it with some drawings. The goal here is that there is a baseline here that your people, maybe at some point, they can explain the data model themselves. So the goal here is that you don't just explain it and you're done. The goal is you explain your data model so well to them that they can explain it to somebody else. So maybe when it comes time to sort of explain the next question or the next object, you hand the reins over to them. You say, all right, now you pull up the Schema Builder, I'll drive, and I need you to just talk. I'm always going to expect admins to sort of coach their teams and get their teams involved in understanding it, help them understand it to grow their own knowledge and their own abilities. So back to the connecting the dots. So connecting the dots is just one way to create data literacy. And then this last one is, or this next one here is about teaching one, reaching one. So this is another way of representing the same thing I showed in the Schema Builder, but instead it's just taking some screenshots of actual records in Salesforce. So I used this account record called Advocate Consulting Group, and I took a screenshot of that account record so that the user would say, oh, this is this record in Salesforce. And then I said that account record has 3 different opportunities. And I sort of named each one, 1, 2, 3. And then I said, and one of those opportunities has 4 opportunity products. And then I expressly grabbed the related list from that opportunity and showed it on screen. So I just sort of used a different interface, a different view to explain to them, this is what your data is in Salesforce, and this is how it reacts and responds. And the goal is you would sort of use this information to sort of help them explain and understand how it works. So again, not rocket science here. This was actually a great reference from a person named Ryan at the DC Nonprofit User Group I met last month when I presented there. But it's just good to sort of take things one step at a time, and ideally just go 1 or 2 objects at a time. Don't go back to the Sales Cloud ERD where there's lots and lots of joins, lots of lookup fields. Keep it simple so that they understand it. And then once you see their behavior start to change, one behavior that I usually recommend as a top tip is once you see them building reports and satisfying their own needs for their own reports, that is a learned behavior. If they continue to resource you for their reports, then that may not be a change. If your goal is to say, I want these people to experience their own data literacy, one of the outcomes would be they no longer rely on you for report writing. Maybe that's required in some complex instances, but in scenarios, you can chunk out a certain set of data model knowledge and then hand that over to them and say, hey, I've trained you on the filters, I've trained you on the data model, you're aware of how these things work. I think you can run these reports yourself now. And maybe you coach them through it, you talk them through it. But by doing so, you are explaining to them their data. You are enabling them on data literacy, and they can understand their data by building their own reports. And at that point, they start to satisfy their own curiosity. That's the key feedback loop, I think, is once you get people to learn how to run their own reports and answer their own questions, you are creating a speed wheel or a flywheel to allow them to answer their own questions about data and extract value from the data that allows them to do their job or perform well. So you park on the ERD with them until those behaviors start to change, until you start to see something change in the way they're responding to your data. And then you expand it if the behaviors increase. So if the behaviors move in the way you want, maybe instead of just saying, this is products, this is contact roles, this is the opportunity, then you add the other object. Now, when I know that you want to know a report based on maybe contact email address, or maybe a contact field on the contact table, maybe you can adjust these and create a specific report type to handle this kind of information. But the key here, you don't give them everything at once. You sort of build small, and once they establish some baseline expectations, you move on from there. Any questions on these slides so far? We got one more, and then we will wrap up. All right, no questions so far. If any questions, please let us know. My last big point is just how to simplify this process, right? We talked about moving data into spreadsheets. We talked about exporting it and giving them their own Excel files. We talked about sort of going with a workable diagram and showing them a diagram of how the records exist. This is a sales record called an opportunity. This is the individual parts of the sale record called opportunity products. Here's the decision makers that relate to that opportunity. They're called opportunity contact roles. One way to do that in Salesforce is by creating a report type. I'll do my customary flag to Evan Ponter, one of the individuals that I presented with last week. Evan is a phenomenal person, and he presents often on the idea of a deluxe report type. A report type is basically a way to create a report in Salesforce, but only to use the fields that you want. So you can sort of simplify it and standardize a report to only show information in a report you want. This sometimes makes it, I'll use the term dummy proof because I think we're all learning along the process, but it makes it really easy to say, use this one report type if you're trying to get this value or this insight out of your data. I'm gonna switch up on screens here and show you this at the top. So I'm back on Schema Builder, but now I'm gonna switch over to report types. And this is under setup, and then you type in report types on the side and you get to this report type view. A report type can be built by up to 3 to 4 connections of other objects in Salesforce. So one of the ones that I have today is a particular kind of report type that includes a custom object I use for project management. It's called project subtasks, but within a report type, I can say, if I use a particular object, I can grab in that one object's fields. So this one object is called project subtasks. It sort of fits this scenario, but I can grab any other fields that are above it in the data hierarchy. So if I go to this edit layout screen here, one of the things I can do is I have the choice of saying which fields are on this report and which fields aren't. So when I create this report type, what that means is when I go back here to reports and I want to look up a report and create one from scratch, when I create a report from scratch, the report types available to me are the ones custom and standard that I created. So if I type in subtasks, this report type is available to me because I've created it as a custom report type. So I click on it here. I can start that report and run it, but I can controlling what fields are available on that report type, on that report for my users by creating a special report type. It's almost like creating a specific set of fields and joins to other objects into one space. So put a 3 in the chat if you guys are using report types in your instance in some way, shape, or form. We'd love to hear, put a 3 if you're using them and what you're using them for. Thanks so much for answering. This helps me make sure you guys are there. Nobody's falling asleep on me yet. Here in the sidebar, I'm going to click on this view menu. And as just a short overview, Evan Ponter's got some great resources out there if you want to view his page. I'll tag him in LinkedIn so you guys can follow him as well. But here, if I click on this add fields related via lookup, this is the main thing where I'm able to say, hey, this project subtask is one object, it's one table. And then if I click on project task, that is a lookup field to a second table. And then if I'm on project task and I want to get up to my next object, which in my instance is called project phase, I can scroll all the way down. I get to project phase and click on that object. So I've just went up 3 objects from project subtask to project phase. So if there's fields on that object that I want my report type, I can select them. I can say whether those fields are included or excluded in the report. So I can sort of control a very specific report and make it very select to what I want my users for. Maybe you have a key forecasting report for sales or a key fundraising report. You can create that and then say, hey, whenever you guys are using this report, only use that one. Don't use the ones that come with Salesforce if they're too confusing. Use the one that just comes, use the one that I built for you just for our business model. Any questions or thoughts on that? Would love comments from the team or from the crowd if you guys have any comments on custom report types. All right, I'm going to switch back here. And then the last thing I'll say is train your users. When it comes to using a report type, don't expect them always to sort of know where to go and how far to click on it. Make it really easy for them. One of the tips that I'll use with teams is create a starter report folder. So this scenario here is just a screenshot of all folders. And then there's one particular kind of report I call the starter. So if I show you back our Salesforce sandbox, and I go back to this menu item here, I'm going to X out of this menu. I'm just going to click on reports. And then I'm going to go to a particular folder here that's called starter reports. So this starter reports, I can say, hey, create some reports that I want to set aside and say, these are for my users to use. And then if I make that report folder view only, it means nobody can change those reports. They can clone them, but they can't change them. So it's one way of giving sort of predefined tables to your team so they can sort of access them and adjust them without having to start from scratch every time. One way you can really make your users happy is by giving them shortcuts and reducing the time it takes for them to build their knowledge. So this is just one called Accounts Data Quality Starter. When I click on it, it's a couple fields that I know I want to look at and review. It's sorted by the field that I want. It's got the account ID on it if I need it. And then your users, if they wanted to make this their own version, you would just train them and say, click on the starter report that you want to use and then clone it, or click the Save As button and make that the report that you want. And then it's yours to work with as you want. So do some of the hard work, the heavy lifting up front, give them all the fields they want on that report, and then put it in that starter folder and then say, hey, always go to that starter folder to get those kinds of reports. Maybe it's opportunity pipeline reports. Maybe it's largest giving reports. Maybe it's Service Cloud reports. Sort of give them the ability to say, I don't have to search Salesforce and then find a report and muddle through all these different joins and report types. I go to a specific place that my admin told me. I use those reports only, and I'm good to go. Again, the main thing we're trying to do is remove confusion, remove the blockers that keep people from being able to perform, and make it really easy for them to get value out of your data. So this is ideally where your team would show up. So if you take them through a sort of a data literacy journey, the goal is some of the things that you would see as behaviors are as they grow in this area or as they explore this with you, you can have them explain what a custom object is. Maybe you had to build a custom object to satisfy a request from an end user or a team, or there's a custom object that's part of a managed package. You can just say, hey, can you pull up the schema builder and explain what this custom object is so that the rest of the team understands it? If they can do that, chances are they sort of rank pretty highly on being able to read data. The same with like a general ERD. Back to my example before, they can sort of explain what an ERD is and why. And then the clutch one, this is one I find is really helpful. This is when you know the light bulbs have sort of gone off, is if somebody raises their hand in a meeting and says, why does this report show XYZ? Where are last month's numbers, or why isn't Joe's numbers on here, or why is this not working? If they can drill into the report, open up the filters and explain it, 10 points if they're able to explain it just based on fields that are present or not present, another 10 points if they're able to explain it on another object's fields. So they don't just explain it on one object, or maybe the opportunity object, or maybe they explain it based on opportunity contact roles or opportunity products. That's a layer away from opportunities, but it means they understand how the data is interacting together, and they can explain that to another team member to say, your report's not working, or this insight's not available to you because the data's not there, or the data's not correct. So let me pause there. That is essentially most of my content for today. I'm going to leave up my 2 QR codes if you guys want to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. But then beyond that, I think I'm at time, aren't I? I am at time. Let me pause and just sort of say, any general questions from the team? You guys are welcome to come off of audio if you guys want to ask questions. We'll stop the recording here. But yeah, let me sort of just pause for a few moments and see if you guys have any general questions or comments we can chat about. Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Lawanda. Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate it. Deb, thank you so much. We will post this out to YouTube later on, probably this afternoon or tomorrow. And then our next event will be, our next workshop will be next month. It will be called How to Work with Data. So we're going to go through all the tools that you can get free or out of the box with Salesforce to actually get your users to get their hands on their data, change it, adjust it, manipulate it, update it, mass update it, clean it up. We're going to work on all those together. So great team. It doesn't seem like there's any questions. I'm going to move on with our day. Thank you so much for joining, team. If you get an email from me, please let me know if we can connect for a short 15-minute coffee call. I'd love to talk more about your ideas. And have a great week. It's wonderful to see you all.